And for today's talk, we have another one from the fine people at the University of Buffalo Center for Computational Research. This is going to be from Doris, Sajdak, and she's going to be talking a little bit about ColdFront, which is a resource allocation system for HPC. So I will turn it over to you, Dory.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having us and giving us an opportunity to talk to your group today. As Jason said, my name is Dory. I'm one of the system administrators here at the University of Buffalo. With me in the room, I have Andrew Bruno, another system administrator, and Mohammed Zia will be joining us in a few minutes. He's the primary developer of ColdFront. I know this isn't a topic that you guys normally hear in this group, but we thought we would give you an idea of what HPC centers kind of struggle with as far as managing all of the information that we have to manage. And also we're hoping to hit up a new crowd, and either maybe you work for an HPC center or you can pass this information along to other people at your institution. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about what is ColdFront. So if you take a look at an average HPC center, we're not providing network or basic server support to the university community or the institution, but we are, in our case at the University of Buffalo, we're the research headquarters for the university. So we focus on high performance clusters. We have some servers that provide a specific tool or use for a researcher. We have a cloud resource here, a private cloud. We might offer special storage or large amounts of storage that the university can't provide to its users. And then we also manage certain licenses for scientific software that either we purchase or our users purchase. Accessing all of these resources are what we call three primary groups of people. We have the principal investigators, all of our faculty. The system administrators obviously have to manage the resources and the access given to those resources. And then you have your center director or some sort of administration group that needs to know what's being used in the center, how it's being used, how much utilization, and be able to report back to their bosses, and in our case, the university administration, to say, you know, this is why we need new equipment. We can prove that this resource is not only over capacity, but outdated. And, you know, we know that we have the desire at the university to use this particular resource, and this is why you should get it. So you might want to call that, you know, scientific impact. Like, how does the center demonstrate its usefulness to the university? So going back a little bit as to why did we come up with this software? We looked all around when our director started talking about wanting to require all of our faculty to update their information every year. So the University of Buffalo faculty are very lucky. They don't realize this, but they are not charged for any general cluster resources. They get some free storage along with whatever compute they can possibly use throughout the year. So we always thought, well, if you get that, you should in turn let us know what you're doing on our system so that we can show everybody the great research that's being done. But trying to get that information out of them annually or even every 10 years was like pulling teeth. So our director said, I want our users to reapply basically every year. So we started thinking about how would we do this for them. In addition to that, we started offering some things that did cost money, such as storage and the cloud. We wanted people to be able to handle all of this information in one interface, so that got added to the list as we started developing this software. Then we wanted our director to be able to report on all the projects and what accounts are associated with each project. So we do allow students access to our resources, but they have to be sponsored by a PI. So those PIs would email us and say, add this student to my project, add that student to my project, take this one off, he graduated. But they could never, they didn't have an easy way to look at their whole project and see all of these people were under them or not under them. So we added that to the list. We also wanted our users to be able to manage their accounts a bit easier, like when a student graduates, be able to remove them out of their project. And this is good for us because in the past this wasn't done, and we had open and available accounts that potentially could be hacked, and then we have a problem with security. So by removing old accounts that aren't being used anymore, that's a plus in our list of pros. And then we also wanted to be able to provide another piece of the open source puzzle for the HPC community. For those of you who are on the XDMod presentation a couple weeks ago, you'll see that product is actually highly developed and was funded multiple years by NSF. So we wanted to tie this project in with that and start being able to offer a full set of tools for the HPC community. So as I said a little bit in the last slide, we wanted our faculty and our users to be able to see all the different pieces of their project, which users they had. If they wanted to get a priority boost, we do offer that. It's sort of a pay-to-play system. So if you add our center into your grant and you get us some money, then you get a priority boost for your group, which we had no easy way of tracking before. And then just as a matter of course, we also would like to know what publications have been generated based on research done out of our center. So they can do all of that in ColdFront. If they want to purchase extra things like storage or cloud, if you might see that I call these subscriptions, we sort of started with that word, but basically we just mean an allocation. Allocation was kind of a taboo word here at the university because most people tie an allocation to money. And in our case, your allocation, you have an allocation, but it's free. So in some cases we have called them subscriptions, but we're switching over to the word allocation now. Another useful thing for the faculty members is when they want to teach classes, they want to provide students with access to the cluster, but they don't want those students to have access to maybe their shared project directory. So they create a new project in ColdFront, and all of that gets separated, but also it's easily managed. And then finally, we wanted to provide one interface for our faculty to go to where they could see not only their projects, but they could see their usage, their group's usage, check their quotas, be able to get support info and things like that. So we've all kind of tied all of that information in ColdFront. So I did talk about this a little bit already, but as far as the system administrators go, we have these allocation requests that a faculty makes, and we can easily go in now, add all of the necessary attributes that we use to tie the allocation to the back-end systems, and we can approve or deny those requests. We manage the resources right in ColdFront. I'll show you that in a minute, and those resources get tied to the allocation. Our biggest thing for making ColdFront, the #1 reason was to automate the access control to our resources. We have over 200 resources, trying to keep track of who is supposed to have access to what, removing them when they should be removed. It was really becoming difficult. We have, I would say, a medium-sized HPC center at a university level, and we only have 5 system administrators. We have over 3,000 servers, a full private cloud, lots of storage. So trying to keep track of who was supposed to have access to what, it was just getting unmanageable. So that was our primary reason. We did agree with our director that, you know, it would be great if people reapplied every year, but this was our main reason why we wanted to do this. And then we also wanted to be able to integrate it with several different authentication backends, whether we were using our university's LDAP or we were using something, you know, here like we use that's separate from our university, whatever. So those were our primary reasons for creating ColdFront. As far as the PIs, like I said, they can request an allocation to a resource. They can add and remove their users. What they'll be able to do right now, if they're using the cloud, they can actually monitor their cloud usage right within ColdFront. Moving forward, we're going to be tying XDMod usage into ColdFront so that they can actually see their cluster usage, their groups usage, and everything right within ColdFront. They do receive automated emails that will warn them if an allocation is set to expire, or when their allocation is approved, they'll get an email letting them know. And then they also have the ability to change the status of their users within their project to a manager status. So what we found is our new faculty coming into the university have absolutely no problem using ColdFront. They love it. No complaints, no questions. The faculty who have been at the university for a while don't like having to do another thing. So what they do is they make one of their postdocs or a student who's been with them for a while a manager in their project, and then they can do all of these things like request new allocations, renew their stuff, whatever. So we'll show you that in a second. As far as the center directors, we do have some nice statistics for them as far as what type of allocations are in the system, you know, how it breaks down. We call these, well, our director calls it measuring scientific impact, but it's more just what kinds of grants did the university get based on our users using an HPC resource. So you can display either, you know, grants or publications or whatever you want, which we'll show you that in a second. Sorry, I didn't realize all of this was semi-animated here. So, whoops. So this is the design, the very basic design of ColdFront. When you first start out, you create yourself an account here at CCR. Anyway, this is how we do it. And you're a basic user. You get your status elevated to a PI so that you can then create a project. And within the project, you might have grants that you want to list. You might have publications. You're going to have your users. You'll describe what your research is for us and let us know what field of science it applies to. And then once you do that, you're going to have allocation. Users are on an allocation, and the allocation is for a specific resource, whether it's a cluster or some storage. That's the basic design. And then every allocation will have an expiration date. It might have some attributes associated with it, whether it's a private resource, you have to pay for it. You think maybe there's specific Unix groups that are associated with a site license. So on this particular allocation, for a software license, you want to say only Unix group XYZ can access that. And then that information is tied back to the system, so the system knows who should have access to that allocation. So as far as projects go, each faculty member would have at least one project, or else there's no way they could have access to a resource in the center. Project includes a description, like I said, field of research, allocations, grants, and publications. The faculty members can have more than one project. Some of ours like to separate their research. Some of their research is completely different. So they want a different description and they have different students that are working on each project, and that's totally fine. We also find this really useful for classes, like I said before, where you want to separate the usage of your research group from the classes that you're teaching. We'll show you the other stuff how you can archive and link publications. So as far as the resources go, like I said earlier, for CCR, we have over 200 distinct resources that we need to track. That includes clusters, storage, servers, software licenses. Some of the resources have limits, like a storage resource would have a limit of either gigabytes or terabytes. Software has a seat limit. Cloud has subscription limits. And all of these are customizable. This is how we use ColdFront, but we've made ColdFront so, I hate to use the word generic because that sounds like it's not useful, but we've tried to make it as easy to customize as possible for any center, even a non-HPC center, who might be able to use something like this. We personally track attributes on resources where we say they're either public or private. We have a lot of faculty members who own their own clusters. We use Slurm here, so we have partitions. We have a faculty cluster and we have separate partitions for each of those people that own their own nodes. So I don't want Dr. Smith being able to request an allocation for Dr. Jones's cluster because he should not have access to it. So we can set the resource to be a private resource, and then we can just say only Dr. Jones' group is allowed to request an allocation for that. And of course, we can, you can really put any attribute you want into this. We track warranty expirations and whether or not there's a payment made or whatever. But you can really do anything with this. Anything that you want to tie, any system you want to tie into ColdFront, you would set an attribute on that resource so it would know what to do with it. As far as allocations go, an allocation, like I think I've described, is basically what resource your account has access to, and if there's any limits associated with that access. So as of now, we've been using ColdFront for a couple of years. So if you want access to any of CCR's resources, you have to have an allocation. We have two primary clusters, the industry and academic clusters, and we've set it so that it's really easy for us. If somebody requests an allocation to that, there's a default expiration of a year. But we have other things that don't expire every year, like our storage or our faculty clusters, so we can change that default. And like I said, that's all customizable. As an example, our allocations for classes expire after the semester. So that's just one way that you can use it. So as far as usability, like I said, our PIs add users to an allocation when they want to associate that person and give them access to that resource, and then remove the user when they're done working for them. And I talked a little bit about the manager role, which our faculty really like. And when you log in as a manager, you're going to see everything that the PI sees, but if you're only a user on the project, you see a read-only view of what you have access to. But this is useful to them because they can log into ColdFront and see if their faculty member gave them access to an allocation that they thought they should have access to. Or they'll see that they don't have access and that's why they can't log into it. The annual project review is what I talked about at the beginning that our director insisted on. You can completely turn this off in ColdFront, or actually it is off in ColdFront when you first install it. Or you can actually control this individually by project. We do have some people that are grandfathered in that never ever have to review their projects and update. And so we just check that off and they never get notified and they're happy. But basically what our review process entails is once every 365 days, you need to review your project, which means you basically just read through it, update the description if you want to, add any new publication or grant information, and verify that the users on the project are still actively working for you. It's very simple, very fast, especially if you don't have anything to update. And then from our perspective, if you haven't updated in the last year, we make you provide a reason why you haven't done that. So a lot of times we would have faculty racing through the thing and just not updating anything, which isn't useful to us. You know, we're not charging you, and we just really want information. So we've made them have to write a justification as to why they didn't update anything. So most people will go back then and update it because they don't want to be a jerk and provide a dumb justification. But in the case that we have new faculty that maybe don't have grants or publications yet, it's totally fine if they don't provide it. We just wanted that justification. So we use this information for compiling our annual reports that our director has to pass off to his bosses. And we just want to be able to show how our center has been productive and why it's worth keeping around. We'll show you in a minute. When you log into ColdFront, you can see what allocations you have access to, and if they're about to expire, about 90 days before, you'll start seeing the banner saying this allocation will expire in X days. About a month before the allocation actually expires, the PIs and the users will start getting emails to remind them that they need to do that. If an allocation expires, so an allocation provides access to a resource. If you let that expire, then at the end, you no longer have access to that resource. So that has been a really good thing for us. Our users are a lot more responsive, let's say, to renewing when they know that they will get cut off. As I said, allocations expire at various intervals, depending on maybe it's a year, maybe it's 6 months, whatever. So the allocation renewal is separate from the project review, which I'll show you in a second. The way we have the back end of ColdFront designed is with plugins. So we want ColdFront to capture all the information about the users and how they're related to the allocations to those resources. And then on the back side, we've implemented plugins depending on what system we want to be updated. So we use FreeIPA for our directory services, and we use Slurm for the scheduler for the clusters. So everything else is pretty much controlled by Unix groups. So if we want someone to have access to the cloud, they have to be in a certain Unix group, and that's all done by the FreeIPA plugin. Anybody who gets access to the cluster also needs to have Slurm associations, and that's all handled by the Slurm plugin. When you install ColdFront, you can turn these on or off. You can configure your own. We've tried to make them really extensible so that it's very easy to just drop your own in there if you want to. Maybe you're running LSF, or you want some plugin for GPFS or something like that. So as of right now, we have the Slurm integration, XDMod integration. Like I said, you can see your cloud usage. We will eventually be able to see cluster usage. We use FreeIPA for directory services. We also built a simple Isilon quota reporting tool in case you happen to have an Isilon. So that's what that looks like. And then we have some really basic system reporting. This is something that we had done years and years ago, so we just kind of tied it into ColdFront as an example of what you could do with your own system reporting. And then we just recently added some basic invoicing. We have some work to do on that, but it does keep decent track of who needs to pay for those extra services that we charge for. Requirements, very simple. Python 3.6, we use Django as the framework, Redis and Memcached, that's it. I'm going to flip over to show you what ColdFront looks like before we get back to the actual vision, like where we want to go with this. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have questions at this point.
So while you're switching, I'll ask one because you actually made me chuckle a little bit. You said when the allocation ends for somebody, all access sort of ceases. I'm guessing that's a powerful motivator to remember that you need to go and update your information so that your allocation does not cease. Has there been any consternation from the faculty when this happens? Do people's data sort of get deleted, or do you just sort of embargo it knowing that that sort of thing is going to happen?
Yeah, so right now we just embargo it. Sometimes it's the faculty that get grumbly about it, but usually they completely ignore their emails, and it's their students who suddenly lose access. And we've just trained the users now, or the students, just go back to your PI and tell them they have to do this, and as soon as they do, you get your access back. The only time if you've let a subscription or an allocation go for a year and you have not renewed it, then you've kind of given up your spot, I guess, and we will remove data at that point. Or that's what we say. We haven't actually done it yet, but that's what we tell people.
All right, thanks.
I had a quick question, maybe. You mentioned something about the ability to do charging for certain resources. So can you generate billing out of ColdFront?
Sort of. It's really basic. Do you want to talk about that, Mohammed?
Yeah, so right now what we're doing is we're just tracking whether you paid or not, or what the status is. Like, so if you request an allocation, it's going to go into like pending payment mode, and then maybe the secretary can go through, and track that whether you're paid or not. Once she marks it as paid, then the sysadmin can take action and give you access. But eventually what we want to do is, I guess, grow this into where you can really generate a nice looking, I guess, invoice. But then again, that's got to be like very customizable, because it's going to vary from like institute to institute. So if you have good ideas about how we can make it really customizable, you definitely want to do that. Generate a nice PDF for an invoice, yes.
No, I was just curious because it's always been a sticky problem, really, how you invoice things and track what's been paid for and not paid for when you're doing a computational center.
Yeah, the way we just have it is you can attach like a document or a note, I guess, to your, when you're tracking the invoice, so you can keep track of like if you generated like an invoice outside of the system, you can kind of like upload that in or add it as a note or something to like this allocation. So you can keep a track of those things. You can do that.
All right.
Or you'll be able to do that.
And sort of along the same lines, but maybe slightly different, if you have users that are in multiple accounts, how do you keep track of which account they're charging their resource allocations to, right? My storage is against this account, but my computational should be against that account.
In our case, storage is controlled by Unix groups, and the computational stuff is controlled by the SLRM associations. So they could potentially be in multiple groups, and that's all. That would all be within the allocation. The allocation shows like the attributes. So the SLRM account, the Unix group, whatever happens to be associated with that. And then on the system side, they need to do the right thing themselves.
All right. So if I run a job, I should make sure that my group ID is correct for the job I'm running.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds great. And do you guys have any issues with collaborative accounts? It's owned by a project, and then there's a bunch of users that want to share a bunch of data within that account, or you just use group accounts?
We use group accounts.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble sharing my screen again.
Oh, let me see.
We can watch presenter view. I'm okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting you share at all. Here, let me try to share mine to break the loop here. Maybe that's what I need to do. All right, how about that? All right, why don't you go ahead and try again?
I've lost the icon that shows like to share it. I'm sorry.
Let's see. It says all participants can share. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me see.
Sure.
How about this?
Okay.
You are now
Got
a
it.
co-host. How about that?
I think I got it. Can you see that?
Now we can. There we go.
Okay. So this is, I'm logged in this case as a PI. So this is what the PI would see, whatever projects they have already created, subscriptions or allocations to the resources. In this case, they have two for two different projects. They have an allocation to our cluster. They could check their quotas, and this is just a basic system status. So if we look at a project, you can see it's broken down into a few different sections. This is our information about the project itself, the description, like I said, field of science. If the PI wanted to update that information, they just update. Whatever users they have associated with the project, and add and use. And then the subscriptions, which I think I mentioned at the beginning, we were calling them subscriptions, we've switched over to the word allocation for those people who wanted to start using this in the open source community. They were kind of pushing for that, and so we pushed back on our director, and he okayed our switch over to it as well. So that'll be in the next release. Any grants that user may have put on, and then any publications. So as far as an allocation, if we look at an allocation, we have what resources are part of that allocation. We ask all of our PIs to provide justification for why they need access to that. Then they have the information about what the start and end date is. And like I said, if you get close to your expiration, you're going to see that yellow banner come up. And I'm not sure how, but some people do miss this, but that will come up about 30, I think it's 90 days before. So they can renew that far in advance if they want to. For us, we use the allocation attributes. Free IPA group is the Unix group. So whatever group is associated with this PI would be on this resource, as well as whatever other groups you need. In our case, we use we use Unix groups for access control to certain things. So if you have to be in the academic group, let's say, to access this cluster, that gets added to this allocation so that on the back end, all of this can be automated. For us, Slurm account name and any other kinds of limits. Like, for example, if this was a storage allocation, it would have a terabyte limit on there. As you can see, it shows the users that are listed in the subscription. It is possible to have 20 users on the project, have 3 different subscriptions for different resources, and not all 20 of those people on the project have access to all of those subscriptions. That can be a little confusing for our faculty, but it is possible, and it happens frequently that we have maybe a private cluster that, the user, the PI is not ready for that student to have access to yet, so they don't get access to it. Show you what the renewal looks like. It's very simple. In this case, I can't renew it because I haven't done the project review in the last year. So this prevents anyone from not only requesting new subscriptions or allocations, but renewing what they currently have. You have not updated us in the last year. You need to do that. So the process for that is 4 very simple steps. Verify your project description. If you want to change it, do it. Add any new publications or grants, and verify the users in your group. If you want to remove people, you can do that. If not, that's fine. This lists when they were last, these items were last updated. So if you have not updated either a grant or a publication within the last year, when you click submit, it's going to make you put that justification in. Now that this project review has been submitted, the PI sees that it's pending, and if they try to renew their expiring subscription, we let them do that. We don't have to approve it right away, but we do let them go ahead and renew the subscription or allocation. All we ask in this case is, do you want to keep this? That's all we care about. If you've just gone through the project review and you've already added or removed any new users or removed people who aren't working for you anymore, then all we care about is do you want to keep this? So it's very simple. It takes, 5 seconds. Once that's done, I'm going to show you what it looks like from my perspective as a sysadmin. I can go and look at the pending project reviews. I can see when it was submitted, who it was submitted by, and then again, when this information was last updated. If they had to provide a justification, it's here. And then our director can either email them saying we need more information, or just mark it complete. And once the director marks it complete, we can come over to the subscription request and see that the project review is in a green state, meaning it's active. It was just recently done, or within the last year anyway. And now, as a system administrator, I go into the subscription and I make any changes that need to be made on the backside as far as allocation, attributes, any special things that we have to add so that we can automate this on the back end. Once I hit active, then on the backside, what happens. So if, people were removed on this project, then it gets removed from the SLRM associations, or if people were added, they get added, and the users have access to that. Excuse me. So that's the basic project, and that's the backbone for our faculty. For the admins, when you're logged in, you can see all projects, all allocations. You would see the invoice section, which we don't have any. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm running in production today, so we do have all of these pending subscriptions that we're waiting on payment for. I can show you this. Like we said, it's very basic, but basically this person asked for a cloud subscription, and as soon as our office manager puts through that information, none of this can be automated because our university is convoluted and has at least 18 different ways to get a payment out of somebody. So she does whatever she has to do on her side and adds notes to us like, I've requested the payment, I've received the payment, and then we can go in and change the status. And when we do change the status, it ends up moving it back under the subscription request, and that's where we would activate the subscription, and then the user would have access to it. Wanted to also show you that, sorry. This is something that anyone can get to, whether you're logged in or not, but this is what we call a scientific impact. It shows all of the publications that have been entered in. We generally ask our faculty to only enter publications that they were able to generate using our resources. But some people enter them all. All the grants that have been awarded, a lot of these are our own from CCR, but you can see the different funding sources, totals. We also now have it broken down, like whether you're a PI or a co-PI on it, so we're not accidentally double counting information. If we have, you know, we have a lot of people, a lot of users that work together and they're both entering that same grant information, so we wanted to make sure that we weren't double counting. The different fields of sciences are broken down. This is the NSF list of field sciences, how many allocations and users we have per allocation. Currently, this is our active, we have 1,000 users. I'll tell you, if I log into Free IPA right now, we have over 2,000 users. So the fact that half of those are active has been a big, a good thing for us. We've been able to say that 50% of these people weren't actually using our resources, and we were able to deactivate those accounts. And then this is just kind of another breakdown of our particular resources and how many allocations we have per resource. I think that's all I wanted to show you. Does anybody have any questions?
So I have another one that I jotted down here, based on sort of the science use cases and tracking the individual things. I think the pie chart that you showed in the slides a little bit earlier showed a pretty heavy bias towards NIH level projects. Do you have to track sort of or provide for sensitive computation and sensitive storage for the people that need it, or do you guys just sort of treat it all as one sort of big resource and don't provide anything special like that?
Are you talking like when you say sensitive, are you talking about like personal?
Yeah, so human data, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Anything that would require the various sort of certifications for HIPAA and all the NIST numbers.
Yeah. So we're not certified yet for any of that. So we don't. I can't confidently say that we don't have any of that data on our systems. However, we've made it clear to our users that we cannot store that kind of data. So we don't track it at the moment because it shouldn't be on our systems. We actually, at the university, has a separate center that does health information data.
Okay, thank you. I think whoever is talking may have a problem with their microphone. We're just sort of hearing garbled noise. You may want to type it into the chat room.
I thought it sounded like chipmunks.
Sure, the SU isn't a user or something? Login as another user.
All right, let's try that. Go ahead, Dory, you can continue. It looks like we're seeing your presenter view again.
Okay, great. Can you still see that? Because I just got a notice that it cut off.
Yeah, you're no longer sharing anything right now.
Okay.
And while you fix that, maybe Mohammed could answer. There was a mention of archiving projects. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so if there's a project that's no longer active, and if you make it archived, then it's kind of like a historical record of what the project was, and who the users were on the project. But then it just won't no longer show up in the PI's, I guess, project list of projects. But they can still access this if they want to see their list of archived projects. That's all it is, really. It's a way for us to keep, just mark projects as historical, no longer, active. That's what it is. that answer your question, or do you have a different idea about what an archive project would be?
So the response in the chat was, so archiving does not keep data.
Archiving does keep all the data.
So in what we're talking about as far as archiving a project is just archiving the metadata about that project. It's not necessarily that we're keeping the data on the systems or Slurm accounts or, you know, Unix groups or any of that. We're just saying in ColdFront, you have this project with this description and these users, and you've decided that you don't need it anymore.
An example could be like, for example, if you do a class in like the spring semester or something, and you know that after the spring semester, you can just archive that project. That's it. And this way you'll have a list of all the users that used your resources, and you know when was it used. So we have that, all that stuff, but that's about it. Just like a record for historical projects. That's it.
Okay, and then there was another question while you guys are paused. For Slurm allocations, can you assign discrete numbers, e.g. 1 million CPU hours, and see the limits and use by users?
No. Are you talking about like Slurm wallet? So we kind of made a decision to, because we wanted to build this with XDMod, and XDMod gets all the usage information for all of the resources in an HPC center. We decided to tie our usage to that rather than start diving into the Slurm limit, Slurm wallet tracking, and all of that. So if you want to be able to, and I'm not saying that we couldn't eventually build this out, but if you want to be able to track usage against an allocation, you would use XDMod with ColdFront.
You already have a plugin, right? Yeah, so we already have a plugin that kind of like integrates them together. So what you would do is you would you know, stand up an instance of XDMod and use that to track, I guess, the usage, and then use our ColdFront plugin to kind of like grab the information for XDMod and put it into ColdFront, and then based on that, you know, you can show like donut charts and stuff about the utilization for users. And if they go over something, then you can take an action and I guess cut off their access.
We do know that there's interest in integrating the Slurm wallet stuff, so there may be people in the open source community that want to expand on that Slurm plugin. We're actually all going to be at PERC, so on my last slide I have information of where you can find us if anyone's going to PERC and has questions about this. We'd love to talk to you.
All right, Kevin says, was hoping PIs could be given X number of CPU hours, and then the PIs could assign fractions of that time to users and subgroups, but he will be at PERC, so you can probably talk a little bit more in person. Yeah,
that's an interesting, that would be an interesting way to go with it, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there are a lot of use cases that, you know, different institutes and universities are using, and we're not familiar with them, so maybe at PERC we can get a good idea of how people are actually using it, how they're doing accounting of the hours and the usage and stuff like that, and then maybe we can then, you know, improve ColdFront and add all these features in based on the feedback.
Jason, can you see my screen, the ColdFront vision?
Yep, you're set to go.
Okay, so we just wanted to point out again that as we're trying to build this HPC tool set, we are partnering with OSC, who has Open On Demand, and they are currently working with the XDMod team to build some usage information into Open On Demand. So as part of those three tools, we want to continue. ColdFront is the youngest, the baby of the family, and we want to continue building on it, and we would absolutely love feedback from users and where they think they could use it and how they think we could extend that functionality. We include this slide that you can take a look at. This is literally how simple it is to install ColdFront. it's not going to look like what I just showed you. It's going to be the basic bare bones setup, but you can run this in about 2 minutes and have it installed, and you can start playing around with this. And then we have all of our contact information here. Feel free to reach out to us. And like I said, if you're going to PERC, meet us there. I'll also be at the poster session.
That was going to be my question. Do you have a tutorial or a workshop or just a poster?
We have the Birds of a Feather session on Monday, just for ColdFront.
Great. All right. Well, I'll pause there for a minute. If anybody has any additional questions, I jotted a couple more down here, but I think that you've addressed most of them. I guess just more of a, not necessarily a ColdFront specific, but more just a data specific question, since I like statistics. Of your user population, what are people using more these days in terms of, you know, traditional high performance computing or the cloud resources that you guys are able to provide as well? Do you sort of have a breakdown of what the various scientific users are really going after these days, and have you seen any trends over time that is pushing people in one direction or another?
Still, the majority of our users are HPC, and they're using the HPC clusters. The cloud is a newer resource that we're offering. We do have some faculty or their students who are using it. We offer it, our cloud is an infrastructure as a service cloud. So once they hear that they have to spin up a VM and they have to install their software and figure out how to move their data, they get less happy to use the cloud. But we have been seeing a lot more of the machine learning and artificial intelligence kind of applications that people are wanting to run, and they do run those out on the public clouds right now. So we're getting a lot more interest in using our research cloud for that.
Containers too.
And then, yeah, and containers. People are just starting to use containers, and we, on Tuesday, just added Singularity to our HPC cluster. So we're, you know, all of that's just starting up.
All right. So Kevin has a question. This looks promising and exciting, especially if there can be integration with XDMod, ColdFront, and OOD. So good. So I'll make sure that Kevin, if you want to shoot me a note or something like that, I can hook you up with the Buffalo people if you have any more information. So thanks, guys. I'll be at PERC as well. We have a session for the EPIC group on Monday afternoon. So thanks everybody for joining today. And if you want to shoot me those slides, Dory, I'll make sure that they get posted along with the video.
Great. Thank you so much.
And just for everybody else, we are on a pause next week for the holiday, so we will resume on the 12th of July. Hope everybody has a good week and a good holiday. Talk to y'all soon.
Thank you.